Well, the Duran Show rides again. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since an episode's been out with all three of us. Today I'm here with Marcus and Mitchell, and we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Open. So let's start talking back through this. So Marcus and Mitchell, you guys went out there and tell us about armies. Tell us about which events you played in, because I think you had a grand tournament and a doubles tournament event. So give us a little setup for prep, points level, all that before we start talking specifics. Mitchell, why don't you lead us off? What was the points level and what armies did you take?
So for the grand tournament, it was 800 points, and it was unique in the fact that it was good and evil. So you got to bring two armies at 800 points, and I took Riders of Theoden, Legendary Legion for my good army, and I took Depths of Moria, Legendary Legion for my evil army.
Oh, so this is a multi-army event, so it's always good versus evil then, huh?
Not always, as we found out, but it was trying to be that way. What ended up happening was if someone only brought one army and the other person brought two armies, the person who brought two armies got to pick which army they wanted to play against the person who only brought one. So it kind of like it favored or rewarded people who brought multiple armies.
Seems like a fair setup, but it also keeps it so there's not like a cost to entry for newer players can still come if they only have one army.
Yeah, exactly.
Outstanding.
And it worked well. And if people brought two armies, then it was kind of cool because you both rolled off. Whoever won got to pick who's good and who's evil.
Nice.
So it was kind of fun.
Nice. All right. So 2 legendary legions. That's not typical for you. You're usually a pure army kind of dude. So interesting. We'll see how that goes. Marcus, let's hear what you brought.
I brought 2 armies as well. I brought for my evil army, I brought Angmar. Just pure Angmar. And for my good army, I took the Dead of Dunharrow, not the Legendary Legion, but like the actual army, Dead of Dunharrow.
All right. I feel like that's a super big departure from the normal meta. Just, I don't know the last time I've seen Dead of Dunharrow by itself. Matter of fact, I'll bet it's probably since Gondor at War came out. Honestly, it seems like everybody just takes the Legendary Legion since then.
Mm-hmm.
And then Angmar, was it a typical Angmar, or was it your Monster Mash Angmar? What was going on there?
I ran a double caster, so I took the Witch King on Fellbeast and the Tainted on Horse with Gullivar. So it was a double spellcaster Angmar. No Barrow Wights. It was just those 3 heroes with a ton of orcs. A little bit of a horde.
Nice. Okay, and I think if there's more details desired on exactly the specifics of each list, I think the last episode you guys spoke to that, so people can always go back and see exact details on the list. All right, so this was a 3-day event, correct?
Yeah, so the first day was doubles, and then the second day, Saturday and Sunday, was the grand tournament.
All right. And with it being in Las Vegas, I mean, you got to tell us, where was this held? I mean, I'm just imagining front and center stage at the MGM Grand, of course.
That wasn't until the last day.
Okay. The final table.
Yeah, final table.
Okay. Curious though, was it on the Strip or
no?
Was
it
off
was
the Strip?
It was just slightly off the Strip. It's to the Rio. It was at the Rio.
Okay.
But the 40K, so the Lord of the Rings turnout was actually only 32 players max. I thought it would be a little bit more than that, and they had a few dropouts. So I think we're at like 23 or 24 players that actually showed up, Marcus, or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think they had 7 cancellations, 7 no-shows morning of the grand tournament.
Yeah. Really? So they weren't even maxed out? That's a bummer.
No, they weren't. Yeah. It was a bummer. But the 40K I saw that they had 1,200 people signed up for it. And then the Star Wars Legion and X-Wing and all that stuff seemed packed. So there was definitely a lot of people.
I think there were 3,000 people registered to play at the event over the course of the weekend across all of the games there.
Oh, that's crazy.
I wonder how that compares to Nova. I have no idea what the player base, and obviously Nova's big, but 3,000 is, I mean, that's significant.
It was, it was a ton of people.
Huh. Okay, cool. All right, well, we can't just get straight into the GT because I'm a big fan of doubles events. So give us a quick recap, and let's go every other game of the doubles event mostly because I liked the picture of the combined army. So you guys brought Durin's folk, right?
Yep, we combined forces. Marcus, for better or worse, decided to be allies, and we were trying to figure out what to bring. And I threw out, well, we're at the Durin show. When was the last time we played Durin? So we decided to bring Durin and all of his folk with him.
Nice. Well, it's certainly a good picture, which I hope one of you guys will post on the Instagram page. Just seeing the cool Hearthguard with their mohawk helmets and all the rest of the Vault Wardens.
And the pretty Vault Wardens.
Yeah.
Red team, blue team.
Yeah.
Red team, blue team. Little Halo interaction going on.
We'll name our army the final stand of the Vault Wardens.
We'll let the listeners decide. How about that?
Or we could have named our army the quickly killed Vault Wardens.
So they only actually died in one game, Marcus, if you remember right.
Oh,
they actually died in one game.
Well,
too much.
Yes.
Let's just get into it. Enough teasers. Let's go.
Yeah, well, let's start. We don't want to spend all the time on the doubles, but I think it's worth a quick recap. So, Mitchell, why don't you start game one, and then we'll hand it over to Marcus for game two of the doubles. And of course, it's a doubles event, so adequate commentary throughout from both.
Yes. So game one, we were playing against the Return of the King Legendary Legion, and we were playing the one, I can't remember the name of it, but the one where half your army is deployed right up in the middle, but on your opponent's side, and then the other half is deployed on your board edge, and then the opponent, obviously, half their army is deployed on your side, but in the middle, and then the rest of their army is deployed on their board edge. So we're like split almost and cut off from each other, kind of a thing. And so that one, I got to look up the scenario on this one. Do you have it, Marcus?
No escape. So it forces you have two parts of your team. It forces opponents to square off, and you have to deploy within 6 inches of each other, on the middle line, and then you have an enemy behind on your back. So it totally flips deployment. It's either or staggered every other one.
So the Marcus deployed up in the middle because he was Durin. I think it forces your leader to deploy up in the middle. So he had Durin and all the Hearthguard, some Iron Guard, right up in the middle, and Aragorn plus a bunch of Army of the Dead deployed right next to him. I then deployed. I had a Dwarf King and the King's Champion, and then I had 4 Vault Warden teams. I think I had 5 Kaza Guard and 2 Iron Guard or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but that was about my list. And I deployed on the back line. And basically what I did was Dwarf King marched double twice, and I was just rushing to get to Aragorn's back. And Marcus was going to try to wrap. The way we were communicating very well on this one. We were wrapping. We encircled him. We kind of cut him off. Our opponents deployed the King of the Dead, and he had Legolas, the controversial third hero pick for the Return of the King Legendary Legion. He had Legolas in the back, who was trying to take shots all day long, and only managed to kill, I think, 1 Vault Warden spear the whole game. I think.
With spending 2 points of might. And
he spent 2 points of might to do that. Yeah. So Legolas pretty much.
What does Legolas do when he can't snipe horses? He does nothing.
That's fair. That's fair. So we basically, the way I remember this game going, we pushed. He tried to get away from the circle, but ended up Marcus was able to pin him down. I then was able to hit the other side, hammer and anvil. We kind of swept the middle. I don't think we killed Aragorn. Did we put a wound on him? I think we put a wound on him.
Yeah, we wounded him.
I think we wounded him, and we broke him. I don't think we broke ourselves.
We did not.
Yeah.
It wasn't really fair. We have fearless dwarves who are strength 4 with a lot of +1s or two-handed weapons to use. And so we were making all of our charges. He couldn't rely on terror, and we just kind of went munching.
Something to note, with Durin on the board, we have a Warhorn. So our Courage 4 dwarves go up to Courage 5. And a lot of times, my Vault Wardens were not in Harbinger range because the King of the Dead was on the other side of the battlefield. And I think, Marcus, I failed 80% of my Courage test to charge.
I think I calculated 86%. of all of and this is not just Hearthguard, but I think your Hearthguard were pretty much the only ones. Ironguard were sprinkled in here and there, but we failed. I think it was 86% of all terror checks required for the game.
With Courage 5, at worst Courage 4. Yeah, so it's some weird rolling. And then on top of that, I think I lost one actual Vault Warden shield. Maybe I didn't lose any, but we were getting nervous because my D9 on my Vault Warden shields didn't mean anything because they were attacking our Courage. So that was game one.
Well, we were nervous because
bad.
We were nervous because we got off to such a hot start, and we killed Aragorn's entire warband by the time the King's warband got there, and then all of a sudden your dwarves were going to hold the line. They failed all their courage tests, so then all of a sudden the dead had a lot of 2-on-1s, and started racking up the kills. We probably killed 10 models right off the cuff, right off the get go, and probably another 10 models the rest of the game. And he was like one model away from breaking us, or they were I think 1 or 2 models away from breaking us by the end of the game. So it did not go nervous.
Well. Yeah, the second half of the game did not go well, but luckily our initial start won us the game. So we had such a powerful start, was able to, coast us the rest of the way, even though some horrible things went wrong. But it was a fun game.
When we both agreed, if Legolas hadn't stood back and shot the whole game, if he would have been up using his might for combats or heroic moves, definitely should have lost that game. But Legolas sat back and shot the whole game and did absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And there was a slight incentive for him to keep Legolas back, which was, I think there's VPs rewarded for killing the secondary hero.
Yeah.
And so Legolas was his secondary hero, not the King of the Dead. So I think that's why he did it. But at the same time, we agreed that if Legolas had been up in our business, it would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, you scored 2 victory points to kill the leader of the enemy secondary force.
Yeah, because even if Legolas doesn't have the strength to wound dwarves, I mean, just getting a higher fight value with the ghost striking your courage would have been huge. Okay. All right. Well, then I guess that goes to another vote in the bucket of why you don't take Legolas under certain conditions. So, very good. All right. So, game 1, what was the final score tally?
Oh, let's do a quick add up. I don't remember. Let's see. We wounded, so that's 1. We broke them without breaking, so that's 5. So that's 6 total. And then we had a banner at the end of the game. They did not. So that was another 2. So that's 8. And we did not wound 8-1. We did not wound their leader.
All right. So you guys are playing it off like it was close, but really the score says otherwise.
Well, no. So Mitchell didn't get into this, but the game ended. I think we actually ended up on tie, I can't remember if whatever the end condition was. But the end of the game was Aragorn with his might, 1 per turn, fighting next to the King of the Dead, and we had no might left on our heroes, and all of our heroes were swarmed in the middle.
I think we lost the King's Champ, didn't we?
Yeah,
we almost lost Durin.
Yeah, that sounds right. So we were very close to Aragorn. If they would have won priority, it would have been a heroic combat. He was a turn or 2 from breaking us, killing our leader, and then it would have been a completely flip-flop score, I think.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. But timing sometimes is the bigger factor. So take us into game 2. Now, this was a 3-game doubles event, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you're 1-0. What's game 2 look like, Marcus?
Game 2 was rough. It was Clash of Champions, which is the doubles contest of champions. And our opponent were actually Jake and Pat, they're the only other West Coast people participating in the event. They took Elendil and Gilgalad. And so quick scoring rundown, Clash of Champions, like Contest of Champions, you have to keep tally of the wounds your leaders, plural, both leaders do throughout the course of the game. And then obviously if your leaders kill the other leaders, or if you kill the other leaders at all, you get a lot of victory points. But it's 3, 5, 7 just for the amount of, do you kill more? It's Lords of Battle, but just like Contest of Champions. And so our leaders were Durin and a King's Champion.
Dwarf King.
The Dwarf King, because he's the hero of valor. So we were in a bit of a pickle. The other thing that's crazy is there's a special rule on the scenario that says whichever leader is behind on the kill tally, just like the Legolas and Gimli rule, the other hero gets +1 to wound. And so I'm not going to spend too much time. We had a strategy to try and do an assault and blitz to try and knock one of them out early on. It didn't quite work.
It didn't work.
It didn't. Elendil and Gil-galad essentially just sat back. Elendil would combat, kill somebody. He would always go first. Then that would give Gil-galad +2 to wound with his spear and with the scenario. So it was wounded on threes, re-rolling like everything. It got messy.
Well, and this is what Marcus said Vault Wardens suck on, which I couldn't believe. So Elendil and Gil-galad charge into 2 teams each of my Vault Warden team. So I have 4 total, so they're in combat with all of them. Elendil combats first, and he's strength 5 with +1 to wound. So he only needs 5s to kill D9. So he easily kills both 2 of the front shield guys of the first 2 Vault Warden teams and goes into the spear guys. Now Gil-galad has +2 to wound, and he has Lord of the West. So Gil-galad with +2 to wound needs 4s by 2s to kill my shield guys. So I got all 4 shield guys of my Vault Warden team deleted in the first turn of combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might as well have Lake Town Guard in that scenario.
Exactly. And so Marcus is like, Vault Warden teams suck. I was like, well, I mean, we're playing Elendil and Gil-galad with +2.
Oh no, this is a three game tournament to talk about Vault Wardens. Don't you worry. No, it just there was a lot. We tried. I think we tried valiantly. There was probably a few positioning. In retrospect, we spent a lot of time. The game ended pretty quick. We spent a lot of time trying to talk like what would we have done differently. And one of the big things was deploy on the opposite side of the board. Like we should have switched deployment to take away the amount of alleys we were fighting through, because that actually was super detrimental to us. Because it was Gil-galad and Elendil fighting in the alleys. So we needed a little bit more space to operate. But I think, especially against good opponents, I think 9 times out of 10 or maybe 19 times out of 20, somebody commanding that force is probably going to win. Because Durin maybe can hold his own for a few turns. He's not the super killy person, but it was the Dwarf King. Like the Dwarf King couldn't. He didn't win a combat. He had the King's Guard supporting, so he was always tied on fight values. Like it was, the Dwarf King struggled a lot. But we didn't take him as a killy hero. We took him to help provide mobility. So it was
and the march.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
Well, and I'm trying to think, if you need 2 killy heroes for a scenario, I don't know what better setup there is. I mean, maybe Azog's Legion with Bolg and Azog, but there's not very many 1-2 punches like that that's set up for a scenario that well as Elendil and Gil-galad.
Yeah.
So,
hey, it was rough because Gil-galad also had Blood and Glory, so he was combating, getting to a hero. He was going after that Dwarf King for the Might region.
Jeez.
And not to take away from Pat or Jake, they played it excellently. They, I mean, we tried to do a couple of baits. We tried to pop Elendil really fast, and we were slightly out of position, so we didn't end up getting it off. But they were recognizing it the whole way, and they just, we're just going to blow up your entire line, and then you have nothing to counterpunch with. They
played very passive. They would combat and then combat to safety. They would not. Yeah. They never went in.
Yeah.
Because they realized they had, Gil-galad was off on a flank. He was never in danger of getting hit. And Elendil never quite went in for a full, I'm going to double up on this and then risk a heroic roll off. So they played very smart.
Well, that's always the tough thing to do, is to not just sink in with heroes like that. It seems like you're not getting your points if they're not getting 2 different rounds of combat off of combat, but I guess it worked out.
Yeah.
Yep.
To the tune of 12-0.
12-0.
Yeah, worked out very well for them.
Yep.
Okay, so now the mighty dwarves are 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about game 3.
Game 3 was against Angmar. So they had an interesting Angmar list. Obviously, Marcus and I see a lot of Angmar. So it's rare for us to see an Angmar list we don't recognize. But this was an Angmar list with a Witch King on horse, crown. I think he had 15 will or something like that. 4 Barrow Whites.
Mm-hmm.
He had Birder and Who's the orc? Gulthimble. Thank you. Who's the orc guy? I was going to say Gulthimble.
4 barrel whites.
Yes, 4 barrow whites.
Jeez.
And I believe this one was Take and Hold, Marcus.
Duel of Wits.
Duel of Wits. Sorry. Duel of Wits. That's right. Quadrants. We were deploying in quadrants. So the goal of this one was also confusing. I don't play a lot of double scenarios, and I did not fine read the scenario pack very, very well. There's some verbiage in here. So there's a 12-inch circle on the page, but it's actually a 6-inch that you have to care about, not 12-inch. It's kind of weird. But
so
what do you mean? What's the circle though? Is it like the dead zone in Command the Battlefield?
There's a dead zone for deployment, but there's a 6-inch center for where you're trying to end your heroes on.
It's like a weird combination. It's like, taking a step back. The scenario is like a weird combination of Command the Battlefield with Hold the Ground. Hold Ground. That's the name of the scenario. So for deployment, it's a lot like Command the Battlefield in terms of you have a dead zone, you're in quadrants, your forces split up, kitty corner, diagonally across the board. But then when it comes to scoring to win VPs, it's like Hold Ground in terms of you want your leaders or your heroes to be in the middle of the board.
It also has a third scenario incorporated with it, Fog of War, where we're trying to secretly note down enemy heroes we're trying to kill. But we cannot communicate that with our partners of who we're going for. So they had 4 barrow whites, Birder, Witch King, and Gulthimble. So there was lots of heroes to pick from that we had to secretly pick.
Each of us picks an assassination target that we got to go after.
Mm-hmm. So
this scenario seems kind of like Dave Filoni directing episode 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. Like, what else can I throw in this that I enjoy? I'll do Fog of War. I'll do Command the Battlefield. Contest of Champions.
Surprisingly, it was a fun scenario.
This is my favorite out of the pack by far, and it's not even close. Like, it's so weird. And Mitchell, you'll probably touch on this for like the reasons why it's weird, but it was weird in a very fun way.
It was fun because I like the aspect of us, because Marcus and I, we were taking it seriously, but we were also trying to have fun with it. So we were trying to have team meetings, but not discuss like what we're not supposed to discuss and talk about. So like I was trying to be very obvious with all of my stuff. So right off the bat, Marcus deploys first. He's on the coordinate, and he kind of sets up around the circle. So he's like, am I going to go left towards this side? Am I going to go right towards this side? Because we're deployed kitty corner, if you can think about it that way. So we have an opponent to our left and to our right. So he deployed kind of like towards the center. And our opponents deployed, and Birder, who was my target, was deployed to my left. And he had with him Gulthimble and I think 2 barrow whites.
2 barrow whites and a bunch of specters.
And a bunch of specters and some orcs. They didn't have a huge model count. And then to my right was the Witch King, the other 2 barrow whites, and some orcs and some warg riders. So I was very purposeful with my deployment on trying to communicate to Marcus who I was going for, and I lined up everybody to the left side. I'm going for this side.
We can't talk about it, but do you see what I'm laying down here?
Yeah, I'm all against the left side here. So I deployed. I had some Vault Wardens. There were some terrain pieces that I was able to plop them in front of very nicely. And I had my Kaza Guard and Iron Guard kind of protecting their rear and kind of harassing with some throwing axes to the eventual Witch King and double barrow whites and some orcs that were coming in behind me. So I pressed in as hard as I could towards the left side. Marcus then picked up the hint. He pressed towards the same opponent, and he kind of like swarmed the middle at the same time because he wanted to make sure that we owned the middle. And then we kind of set up some nice, I'll kind of skip through it. We set up some nice hero combats that went off. So I remember my Dwarf King hero combated, killed Gulthimble, and then kind of looped some extra guys in to help Marcus try to kill Birder. We eventually broke them. My King's Champion was paralyzed, but it was interesting. They were doing single dice paralyze on warriors as well, not just heroes. They were trying to paralyze certain warriors that were in position. So it was interesting how they were using their 4 paralyzed spellcasters.
That almost seems like a huge error myself.
Well, but the only hero that was in combat except for like the very last turn, was the King's Champion. So they didn't have like Durin. I was keeping him a little bit away because Birder was pressing, and I didn't want something weird to happen where Birder was all of a sudden going to be on Durin without a lot of support. And so they were model count wise, I think they were this exact same as us. Orcs versus dwarves, fearless dwarves. And so they were going crazy trying to find ways to get value early on, and that resulted, like, there were a lot of paralyzes on Hearthguard, Iron Guard. That didn't go off.
I guess that makes sense, because if you're matching up orcs to dwarves, you're in trouble if the count is even.
Yeah, so they were going for some paralyzes on some of our warriors, and it didn't work out a lot of times, but some of them did go off. What I remember is I killed Goldthimble, so I was happy because anytime you kill a hero, it might be Marcus's target or something like that. So I was happy I killed a hero. I was trying to get into Birder. Marcus was pursuing Birder. Birder almost got away, but Marcus was eventually able to track him down and kill him. I then, once I saw Birder was going to get trapped and killed, I double backed, turned around, and hit the backside and tried to kill some Barrow Whites.
No, we're skipping through the craziest part of the scenario. So, like, you're saying you were so obvious. And I thought he was like, okay, Mitchell clearly sees the most dangerous of these war bands, completely isolated. This will be an easy opportunity to wipe the whole thing. And we can turn around and deal with Witch King later. But we got pinned, like, the scenario piece in the middle that we had to get to only had 2 entrances because there was a bunch of, like, tent camps. It was a weird centerpiece. And I locked down one of them, but the other one was totally open. And we got trapped between terrain pieces that was outside of 6 inches. And so we start getting out to the late game. Birder's still alive at this point. But Mitchell goes to call a heroic move to counter to get a huge positioning advantage. I'm like, obviously you're going to heroic move through this piece of terrain so your doors can go hit the Witch King well before he can ever get within 6 inches. We'll completely lock off this centerpiece. We have total board control. And Mitchell heroic moves towards Birder. And I was like, what are you doing? We just lost position on the whole board.
Well,
for the target.
It was my target, which at the end of the game, who was your target, Marcus?
Birder, but
it was Birder.
I killed him.
Yeah, but I wanted to make sure we killed him. It's like he was about to get away. He was about to get away. He was running from you. He was running from you. And I was worried he was going to get away. So I made sure I locked down we killed Birder.
In the Hobbit movies, when the Iron Hill doors put their shield wall up, like, imagine that scene, and then Dane Ironfoot say, "Screw this, run him backwards," and everybody turns around and runs away. That's exactly what happened. We had the perfect positioning.
I was going for the objectives.
Well, now I guess shame on me for not asking this right off the bat, but I think there's probably a lot of people who don't play doubles regularly. So can you all explain why it is you can't talk about this with your teammate ahead of time? Just what are the restrictions in doubles?
It's just on this scenario. It specifically says don't collaborate and tell your person who your assassination target is. So they're very much like honor system, because you could obviously abuse this. But on the scenario itself, it says, hey, pick your target who you want to try and kill, and you can't share this with your teammate.
Okay, so it's explicitly shows what you can and can't talk about.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
So anyways, we end up killing Birder. We then about-faced. We did punch through that orc shield wall. And I killed, I think, actually both Barrow Whites on the Witch King side. I know I killed at least one, but I think I got the second one at the last turn. So basically they ended, I knew we got the target because, of at least both of our targets, because no heroes were alive except the Witch King, and you can't pick the leader to target. So I knew both Marcus and I had killed them. We had broken them without breaking them ourselves, and then we misread, at least I misread, the final position of the hold ground is actually 6 inches, and I kept thinking it was 12 inches, so my heroes were actually outside the ring. So I didn't score points for being inside the ring with the heroes, but I think we scored like a 10-0 victory in the end.
Well, the wording on this is like obviously also the weirdest word. It's like you score 2 points or 1 point, whatever. You score points for every one of your enemy's targets that finishes within that central objective. So I think the victory points were designed to entice all of the heroes to go to the middle and not just run away. You can score a ton of victory points for being in that 6 inch bubble. And so I think it ended up we had zero. We didn't have any heroes within 6. We didn't have any of their targets because we only had 2, King's Champ and the Dwarf King, within 6 inches of the hold ground. So we missed out on all those victory points.
Which
It
I
actually
think
sounds like a pretty sweet incentive, though, to have a Duke out in the middle.
Yeah, that's basically what they're trying to set up. But I think we ended up with like a 10-0 or an 8-0 victory. I can't remember, depending on the score.
Yeah.
All right. So either way, no matter what that was, you had 2 major victories and 1 major loss in the 3-game doubles event.
Yep.
All right. And that looked like kind of a really weird deal because it seemed like there was like a 20-way tie for 3rd place.
Oh, I can't even remember. Do you remember, Marcus?
Yeah, there were a lot of people that finished 2 and 1. I think we had a good advantage, but for that 0-12 loss.
Okay. I remember. What did we place? I can't remember.
I think you tied for 3rd. There was 4 that tied for 3rd, I think.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
There were 14 teams in the doubles tournament. So I think we were in that hodgepodge for third place.
Yep.
All right. Well, 2 and 1's always good, especially when you're trying to figure out how to play with a teammate versus being the sole general. And you two did not hit each other during the doubles event, so that's good.
Oh, I almost threw a Vault Warden at him because you know what Mitchell just conveniently skipped over in our Angmar game. What was our courage test ratio for Vault Wardens, Mitchell, against Angmar?
Okay. So again,
with no harbinger.
Courage 5. So you're basically complaining about the courage of elves.
Make an easier argument. Were you better or worse than the Army of the Dead, the Legendary Legion, Game 1? And the answer is worse. Not noticeable. Or okay, maybe worse. Mitchell on the day rolled less than 20% success rate for charge tests on the 5 models that needed to test.
For Courage 5 models.
All right. So note to self, Courage 5 sucks. Must have
Courage
Fearless.
5 sucks. Must have Fearless, apparently.
No, the difference is why leave it up to the dice? When you can take Fearless, take Fearless.
But I will also note that not a single Vault Warden died in our...
Because they weren't in combat.
No. I disagree. They didn't die.
I have an undefeated record when I don't play.
Oh, man. Okay.
So anyways, my next
hot take for next episode.
My next
should Vault Wardens be thrown out of the game?
That is a great topic because my next army list just happens to have at least 12 Vault Warden teams in it because I'm going to take this against Marcus.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to take one terrifying model and laugh as you fail all your courage tests.
On a serious note, though, did you guys kind of enjoy the doubles event to try and, because it's basically a warm-up, right? You get to know where the facility is, you get to meet some of the players, you get to see the boards. So do you prefer that format before a GT? Just curious.
100%.
I would take that every single time,
to be able to play on the boards and also shake up, we're all traveling to this, right? So it's a long travel day. It was a late night. I think we flew in, our flight got delayed a little bit. We didn't land until 1 a.m. And so to have the ability to low-key relax, play some fun, legitimately fun games. The double scenarios are super fun. Shake the mental fog, get geared up to try and win, but not have it penalize you for making a dumb mistake early on. So clutch.
All right.
On the flip side, at the end of Sunday, playing 9 games in 3 days is rough. So I was mentally taxed. So there is a flip side to that.
Yeah, you give and take. The back strain, bending over the table for 3 days in a row. But yeah, on the flip, I totally agree with you on the positive side of just getting to see the boards, see the facility, and kind of not have that jitters of the game actually matters the first time you throw dice after you get off a plane. And of course, everybody wants to win. It's not like you're throwing the doubles event. It's just not the same amount of stakes.
Mm-hmm.